Okay. So, welcome to all of you. I sent a email on Thursday with an attachment that for everybody who's sort of on the mailing list of this and has internet capability. I also have copies of the same handout, and we are going to be discussing this. So what Don and I thought might be helpful is for us to together recite the creed. Who needs a handout?
I do.
Should be on your email, huh? Sorry. Did you get the email on Thursday, Mary? Do you know?
No, well, I wouldn't be on your list, I don't imagine.
I added your name to the list, actually, to the
Oh,
because you were here last week. I tried to add some of the people who were here last week, who aren't normally on the list. So, and here are pens for people because I think it'd be helpful to jot down.
It was not the one with the Zoom thing. It was a separate email.
Yeah, it was the same. It was on the same email as the Zoom link, wasn't it?
No, yeah. Well, I
It
got
should have been.
it's a separate.
Wow. Huh. So, anybody need pens? Because it'd be nice to. There are a couple questions for people to respond to guide our conversation. So I will just read those questions aloud, Mary. So those of you who at home
okay.
and don't this,
Okay.
there's a chair up here. There are about 3 chairs back there in the corner.
There's one here.
There's one up here. Yeah. But you said 3 chairs in the corner back over there.
Red suit. It was out there like.
So let's just recite the creed together. Those of you who are on Zoom, sort of say it to yourself because Zoom and unison reading is a really unattractive combination.
Yeah.
But let us say this aloud or in silence together. I believe in God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, so unviolent, who was crucified, died, and so buried. He descended to the dead, on the throne of the soul. He descended to heaven, and is sitting at the right hand of God. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. The weak called Spirit, the Holy of the Church, the Doctor of the forgiving of sins, the race of sin. So what I'd like to invite you to do is look at these 4 questions and just jot down some things. Mary, okay. Don and I would just like to open this up to we don't need to go through each of the questions. We are very interested in hearing your response to the first one, especially, I think. But anything that you would like to share individually from about this topic, as you have gone through these questions and seen sort of what has come up for you. Yeah, who would like to start? Yeah, Bill.
Oh,
And just please speak good and loudly. And those who are on Zoom, please let us know if you cannot hear, okay?
okay. I'm just responses to all, but this is my response to the first one. What do reciting these words of worship mean to you? Acknowledgement of a stage in Christian worship, nothing more.
The acknowledgement of a stage in Christian worship and nothing more. Want to say a little bit more about what you mean by that? Yeah.
Well,
Sorry.
the creed came along at a later stage in Christian history than the beginnings of the Christian church. And so, for example, Paul in Corinthians talks about the community of Christ includes slave and free, Gentile and Jew, young and old, male and female. And that was a key point of contention in the early church. Who is in the church? Who is acceptable to be in the church? And about the only reference to that in the creed is the communion of saints. And of course, the creed by itself became a new set of boundaries by which you could tell who was excluded from that community.
Okay.
You didn't include our opening phrase for this, which I think has become more important to
Yeah,
me.
so the statement that Don helped write.
Historic statement.
Which is, let us confess our faith in the triune God as expressed in these historic words.
And that to me is what connects me to the history, to others around me, brings us together in some communion that is not necessarily physical, but important. And I don't believe everything that the groups I join or others that I affiliate with. I affiliate with them for personal reasons, maybe not all of their reasons.
Mhm.
But that doesn't negate their statement and the totality of the statement. Everything today has become too me. There has to be some commonality among us for us to be us.
This didn't come an answer to any one question. It's been more where I've come with sitting with this. I don't like to lie. And I feel like when I'm assisting ministers, and I have to say all of these words, because all of these words, I'm for live stream especially, I have to, you're leading. I feel sometimes like I'm lying. These are, and it matters to me. And I've been thinking about how I've sat through the years in church with this being okay because it's historic and understanding that for myself. And I'm godmother to several young women now, and I've sat in church and said this creed with all of these words for years, and I think, I just don't know that I'm confessing that I believe in every word of it. It is that's how they're going to take it. And when I think of the times in my life that I have been one of those people that wasn't accepted in the church as a lesbian,
Yeah.
and I think of the young people, how would they know that how I'm saying it is as a historic, as a community thing? I just think it bothers me more and more to say it because of not for how it joins me with all of you, but how it is taken by those who sit and wonder about these things. A whole lot of my nieces and nephews, I mean, this is not, it's not for them. This is not exactly how they would say it. They don't say it. They believe in God. This is just where I find the communion with others in the church and with throughout history is at the supper and in the holy, holy, holy. That part feels like I'm singing words that my parents and my grandparents, and maybe to a different tune. It doesn't do it for me in the creed.
I agree with Julie completely, and I have exactly the same problem when I'm assisting. When I'm sitting in the pew, I can delete. I don't say the things I don't believe, but when I'm assisting, I have to proclaim it, and that is painful. In addition, my concern is not nieces and nephews, but I've had numerous occasions where others who are not of any faith or not of ours are joining us for worship. And I really don't care what introductory phrase goes before the creed. This is for their, in all intents and purposes, our statement of belief. And then I have to quickly pivot and say to them, oh, no, 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 we don't all believe this. That's just ridiculous.
I want to ask you, before I preside next week, can we just edit bulletin? I don't want to have people go through misery.
Both my hearing aids are plugged up.
So got it. I said, since I'm preaching next week and presiding, I prefer to have this edited out of the bulletin then, so that I don't have to watch people suffer.
Right.
Have to recite things they don't wholeheartedly believe. Like Julie, I think I've come to the point in my later years of that the creed is something to be studied,
Mhm.
but not necessarily recited. In the same way that we make choices about which portions of the Bible we're going to read lectionary wise, because some things just, I'm sorry, it takes too long to explain this, why the people of Israel wanted God to kill the enemies. It's just, okay, that's just going to take too long. The creed more and more, I think, for all the reasons we cited, is a historical document that deserves good explanation. And for me, I would, the credo, the Latin word we get free from, the I believe, I think is I'd much rather reword this as I put my faith in this, because it's just trying to explain to people, I believe in God. Well, that has virtually no meaning. I mean, what? And furthermore, I'd like to do a little grammar on this. Well, that's for Don, you can comment, but I mean, I'm pretty sure there were no commas in any original Greek or Latin version of this. I've never understood why we put the comma after God. I think we are saying, I believe in God the Father, comma, who is the almighty creator of heaven and earth. That's a statement about the first person of the Trinity, in the same way that the second part of it is, I believe in Jesus Christ, comma, who is that? His only son. So I think that just starting with the I believe in God stop is a non-starter for so many people. And we've developed the international consultation on English text, gave us a more modern language. They didn't deal anything with the punctuation or the grammar. And I would have, if they'd asked me, I would have done that. But so. And one last thing, why do we not more often than recite the Nicene Creed, which is in the plural, we believe, rather than the personal I believe? I think it's a more complete definition of what the Trinity is, but still I would say it's more a historical document to be studied. We also all profess as ELCA people that we hold to the Athanasian Creed, which is doubtless you will perish eternally if you don't. Which again is an important historical document that deserves study, but we don't do it because we know it's so often.
Well, ironically, the Athanasian Creed includes something that Luther would call works righteousness.
Yeah.
Is therefore contrary to Lutheran commitment and witness and putting our lives on the line for it. So that's even more inappropriate, but it is used liturgically in some Missouri Synod churches on Trinity Sunday. And as I told you last week, I have problems using the Nicene Creed in the liturgy because it's a theological statement, and that's inappropriate, I think. But of course, the reason we say I believe in God, this is from the fact that this was used at baptism. And people who were becoming Christians, and before they went under the water, they probably used immersion, like Baptists do today, before they were drowned 3 times and came up to a new life and were robed in a white robe, symbolizing a new life, rising from the dead. They said, I believe. I believe in. Now, as I pointed out last week, it's not I believe that. So I believe in God. Well, what God? Why are you jeopardizing your life in being baptized? Oh, it's because I believe in this is the ultimate reality.
Yeah.
So, but it, as I also indicated, part of the problem is that the language is the language of appropriate for that time. And the reference to the Virgin Mary goes to the fact that this was mentioned in 2 of the Gospels. The other 2 don't mention it.
I would have wanted to have been on a church committee that came up with a creed. I mean, it's like a mission statement, having to wordsmith something. I guess I just don't understand why every Sunday and every service, this is a critical part. You know, yes, for baptism and for other things, but we're not that church that had to say which God, which God we believe in. So but
What's objectionable to you in this?
well, I mean, there are things I don't. There's several things that I can't, so it's everything from the Father, I believe in God, a creator it's more gender. I have to take gender out of that. I don't say Father. I don't say virgin. I don't say the third day. I don't say, I mean, it's just, and the resurrection of the body. It doesn't, those things aren't what gathers me in with the church. Again, I would say communion is the time when I'm gathered with the whole church. That's where it goes for me. And I don't know why this is necessary in all the services.
Again, I agree emphatically. And I had occasion late summer to be up in Minneapolis and visit 2 large Lutheran congregations and learn that in that area, the creed is not said routinely. They save it for baptism. And I have to tell you, it was amazingly freeing not to have to stumble over that in the services. And I too find numerous things that I disagree with throughout the creed.
I really like the creed.
She likes the creed.
I really like the creed. There are things that I don't say though, right? Like I say the Mother Almighty. I came from a tradition that didn't use the creed whatsoever. So learning the creed was really important for me. I think something that's nice about the creed though, except for the father part. And like knowing that I think it's funny that it says the Virgin Mary, just because like it just shows the myth that was created to form this creed. Like there's ways of reading it. And it can be read in a very processed way. But it's loose, the language is loose enough that you can fit most Christian theological systems within it. Right? So it's actually, I kind of find it freeing that way. Or like the resurrection of the body, we could think of that literally. I don't, right? But I think of that as like a commitment to believe in material resistance, that all life will eventually flourish on earth. So I think that's one way of thinking about it. I also like I was listening to a lecture today by Judith Butler. She like does a lot of theory with gender performativity. So like you are the gender that you perform. And like for me, saying the Apostles' Creed is one way of like performing Christianity. And that's what ties me into the tradition. Because like I started a class this week at the university, and like there was a lot of shocked looks on people's faces when they found out that I go to a Lutheran seminary. They don't perform Christian that well. Because most Christians want me dead. So this is just like what I don't agree with everything that's said in the statement. I rework some of the things that I really have problems with in my head, which is like working out my faith, whatever, Paul. But also like this is like one of the parts of the service where I don't get extremely angry. I can't like the song that we sing right before we have communion. Enrage, like sometimes I can sing it, but most times I just get very angry at it. I pray an Our Mother instead of an Our Father. There's lots of things that happen within the service. Like if we were just gonna start passing everything that makes us angry, then like what kind of Christian, like what do we have left? And there's a lot in our service that is really offensive to like non-binary folks or people who are disabled. Like there's still a lot of stuff there. And so yeah, that's all I got. I'm so sorry.
I want to see how many people would like to respond to what the daughter of a Danish Lutheran pastor had to say.
On Reformation Sunday.
On Reformation Sunday. Yes.
Well, I'm with Julie and with Mary. I have been there for quite some time. And I have put circles around or outlined the things that I don't believe in, or and they're not even historical. They may be historical statements, but they're meaningless. And that's, I could go on and on about other things that I believe, but that's my 2 cents worth. I'm in support of doing something about the creed, but on the other hand, I know that there are many people that have different feelings about the creed. And if someone wants to say the creed, go ahead and say it. I don't have to say it. In fact, I am sorry, Dave. The young man that was in here and couldn't stay, and he and
Yeah, John Kennedy.
yes, the group needs to have heard what he said, because it was in essence he was saying that the creed is very important to him. It enhances his Christianity and his belief, his spirituality. So, and of course he's a son of a pastor too, I know.
Okay.
But anyway, and I think that though that it's not just the way that I feel, other people, I need to respect how other people feel about and what it means to them.
Second, Bill, for those who haven't had a chance to talk yet, since you shared a little before, I just want to be sure that others,
I have,
yeah,
we can accept things that we don't believe. We have over 30 people here tonight, or today, so that's some commonality. And Donna and I go back to teenage years. I can remember being in catechism class,
Right.
and opposing some of the things that was being taught.
Yeah.
And even as a teenager, I did not say the words that I didn't believe. And but I think to focus on the commonalities, and we can love people and accept people who are different in many different ways, but we don't have to believe what they believe or do what they do. But at least let's get acquainted.
The creed takes me back to my 11-year-old self in confirmation class, where they were always sending notes home to my mother because of my disagreements. But on the other hand, I disagreed at 11 with the creed. But on the other hand, it is the comfort of unity with Christians that I feel when I recite the creed. I don't believe in all the words. Some of the words make me feel hostile to Christianity, but there is comfort in it. The same way there's comfort for me saying the Lord's Prayer, which I continue to say, Our Mother, Father. Nobody, I'm saying it out loud. Nobody says anything to me. Everybody who's within hearing knows I do it. But there's still that Christian unity and comfort in my congregational feeling for Redeemer, or for my congregation. So, I'm here because I love the Lutheran liturgy, and this very troublesome creed is part of it. So here I am.
And even to the details of punctuation. They're just little dots or little curved dots, but it does make a difference to some people. Some people overlook it, but here we are, in spite of it all. Agreements and disagreements.
So I kind of have a question then, because I kind of fall where I like that sense of community, and I find, I think some people worded it well, but I also understand the struggles with what it does say. Is it a concept of, which is jumping ahead maybe to a question, but like the concept of all together confessing something, some type of creed, but not those words? I mean, I guess that's a question I'm asking others, because I do like that sense of being all together. And I respect that everybody has different feelings about what is in the creed. So I don't know,
For a few years ago, I preached at the seminary chapel when it was the commemorative day for Athanasius. So, but what came to me then, I think it works with all three creeds for me. It's the Athanasian Creed, especially. I think it's kind of like the goofy relative who comes to your Thanksgiving dinner, and you say, "Well, we all sort of know what they're about, but it's family, and for one day a year we can deal with this. Well, we wouldn't want to do it every single mealtime, and maybe in some ways But if it were this goofy uncle's birthday, we'd honor him, whatever. Well, if it's a baptismal day and it's a birthday, there's a time for certain things, but it's part of the family, the historical family. But, there's no need to make everybody squeamish all the time. I guess that's how I've come, especially the Athanasian Creed, but from what I'm hearing, maybe it's true of all of them. So,
Let me share with you my response to the first question or the questions. My problem is I've received theological education, which has helped me recognize not to be a literalist. That's contemporary Christian self-understanding. It's deliteralizing a lot of what we have said in the past. It's deliteralizing a lot in the scriptures. Take the story of creation. If you take that literally, you have to go through all kinds of mental gymnastics to try and deal with evolution and so forth. And there are people doing this. It's crazy. If you can understand how people wrote and communicated religious insight and tradition and memory, then you understand they used language that was other than just literalistic language. So that's my advantage in reciting the creed. I am not a literalist. On the other hand, why do I find it comforting? It's because I consider myself to be a Catholic Christian. Right. That is a part of a community that reaches back 2,000 years and that reaches out around the world. And this is only, as I said last week, only the Latin Church has this. The Eastern Church, Greek Church, doesn't, although they say it's kosher. But that's me. And I recognize not everybody is at that point. So I respect the frustration. If I went through and had to be literalistic, I'd get rid of all kinds of words. I don't believe that God is almighty in what most people assume by the word almighty.
yeah.
I think God is self-limiting, not all-powerful. God is limited in power. That's because the nature of God, I believe, is expressed in and through Jesus, and that the ultimate reality standing behind the universe and me and my life and you and yours is self-giving love. And love is not almighty. Love is not just controlling. And to be in a to be in a relationship, the old-fashioned word is covenant, right? The old covenant and the new covenant. To be in covenant with God means to be in relationship. And Jesus says that relationship is one of self-giving love. So I don't, Father is a problem, Almighty is a problem, Virgin Mary is a problem, etc. I won't go through all of it, but that I deliteralize because I've been trained to do that. I've had the advantage of being able to get beyond that, and most people haven't. So I have great sympathy for those who are troubled by it because they're looking at the words literally and not quote unquote poetically like that way.
I'm with Don, I'm with Brad. And a way that I have sometimes and often expressed this is to relate the creed and the Bible and to say they are both absolutely critical to me, but I do not believe in them literally. I believe in them literarily. They are true the way poetry is true. They are true the way metaphysics is true. They are true the way metaphor is true. And I lay claim to the underlying meaning in those stories, not to the literalness of the stories. I would
The
not.
Father's a bad metaphor for God, so.
No, but
Say more, Larry.
Um. Just echoing, I think, the things that have already been said. But I want to defend your Don. I'm not a literalist either. It isn't because we're proclaiming this in that I believe these words, and I appreciated your in clarification last time. But I'm sensitive in the church to things that exclude.
Yes.
And
Right.
in this comfort of tradition and historic things and not taking it literally, I do have been worrying about the people in it. There's a lot of people. That's who would think this church is saying, now, don't take this literally. I believe, and I'm worried about what we're proclaiming because we are using these words, and it's not what's going on in my head. I feel it includes it binds us together, but it's so doing that is so close to excluding people.
I'm particularly worried about the finger wagging of he will come to judge the living and the dead. Please throw that line out.
Didn't coming to judge it, it didn't say what conclusion he was going to come to when he was done. Sorry for using the he pronoun.
It's a dead threat. It's I never read it that way.
That he is Christ. And
Well,
and
okay.
Jesus said that he's a
Should
dude.
I mean.
Actually, you were,
Yeah.
you know,
Over the years, I have found a lot of benefit in struggling with various parts of creed. The resurrection of the body. Well, I know my physical body, I'm pretty sure it's not going to reform and exist. I've come to believe that, well, I believe in the resurrection of the body of Christ. It's the churches. Life everlasting. Well, I'm quite content with letting the mystery be. And maybe the resurrection is, there's, God would agree with me on this, but I know in the Chinese, my impression of the Chinese culture is that, life everlasting is, being remembered by those who come after you. That's the memories of your ancestry is very important to that culture. I think there's a lot of benefit in having saying the creed and putting it on the line for somebody who's never been exposed to it before, who's hears of visiting us for the first time, to say, well, this is one sort of basis of what we believe, and be aware that you're going to have to struggle with this, just like the rest of us have had even over the years. So I think there's a lot of benefits in having a basis for
uh, let's say, a conversation among us all about what parts we have trouble with, and how do we resolve those things that we struggle with.
Every other one, take one. I don't even know if that will make it around the room, but I didn't realize there'd be this many. I was trying to fuss with if we kept the creed, what could be done liturgically? And I think the notion of not having using the Apostles' Creed every Sunday is something I actually warm to, and I really like. That's the thing I mentioned. The statement of faith by the United Church of Christ way back when, it's something I said, wow, that's really worth affirming. So if in fact we did use the Apostles' Creed, even occasionally, what you see at the top is a suggestion of what would be in very small print. So it's not the same typeface as the parts of the liturgy that we would use, but this would be like a very brief explanation. The core of these words, I'm not saying all it knows, the core of these words were used at their baptism, and this is how far back it goes, by third generation Christians. I mean, this is like the grandchildren of those people who knew Jesus. By third generation Christians in Rome to celebrate their union with the God who meets us through Jesus, I believe in. They are not primarily a set of beliefs. I believe that. So I tried to summarize the historical background. Or another way, a shorter version, these words reach back to the baptism of third generation Christians, which affirms the God who meets us through Jesus. They are not merely a set of beliefs, because you do have elements being put into the creed that are a statement of beliefs. And then liturgically, these are possibilities to use. Let us confess our Christian identity. See, not our Christian belief systems in these historic words, or let us confess our unity with other Christians throughout the world and across the centuries in these historic words. Now, those are just possibilities. And so if you want to expand the conversation with it, referring to this, help yourself.
I like the last paragraph, our unity with other Christians. I don't know how that fits in with the core of these words. Are they both then at the beginning of the creed and then the creed?
Yeah, because this is the Apostles' Creed is affirmed by most Christians throughout the entire world. That's almost 2 billion of us.
But you would have the last sentence on this sheet. That's what would be spoken before we speak it. The explanatory, the context paragraph would be in the bulletin, but that would not be used.
Recited,
right?
yeah. It would just be in small print, an explanation or a pointer to what's going to happen in these words or what they are meant to mean. But as I said,
Yeah, Bill.
This is a problem which has plagued the church since the very beginning. I remind everyone that Paul in the early church had to decide whether or not Gentile males who joined the church had to be circumcised or not. It was a divisive issue in congregations that he wrote letters to, and we have copies of those letters. And whether they could eat meat that had been sacrificed on a pagan altar or not. And some Christians realized that was an irrelevant question because idols were nothing. But other Christians in their community felt uncomfortable eating meat that had been sacrificed that way. And so when they came together, it was a problem for them. So these issues, when we come together for worship, have been here since the beginning. And it won't go away even though it's 12:15.
We will clearly continue these conversations. There'll be a couple week interruption, but I think clearly the level of interest, and there's a lot more to talk about. And for people who haven't had a chance to speak. So we will continue these in several weeks. We have a couple things going on the next couple weeks, but probably 3 weeks from today. And then Don is preaching 4 weeks from today.
Yay.
And hopefully we can do that as well. So count on the 19th and the 26th of November being continuation of these conversations. And then see where this is. Yeah.
Well, can I just say, so next week, when I'm here to organize the forum, I'll pick up on Alan's thought. We're going to look at the literary text, some poems of Robert Frost to get at, I hope, theological truths, not in a literal way, but literarily sort of thing. And maybe there's room for this kind of conversation too. Just a short couple lines from one of his long poems, but at the end he said, "And were an epitaph to be my story, I'd have a short one ready of my own. I would have written of me on my stone. He had a lover's quarrel with the world." So maybe that's what we're doing here, and that's good.
Anybody have something just as that you don't want to wait for several weeks to get out?
I have to say, I really like the Canadian one on the flip side. It's short and it's true in terms of gender things. And it covers the parts of the Trinity without being too persony about it, that confuses people. And it talks about our life as well, which I understand the Apostles' Creed was not trying to do, but is I think a nice thing to include.
Okay.
Anyway.
So like thinking about Pastor Dave's sermon today, right? Like this partnering in creation would mean that it's not God's world, which is on the first line of this. And I think that is like an interesting place to also be having this conversation. Is like you did a rule process thing up there in your sermon today.
Process is a kind of theology.
It's a philosophical system that you can think about theologically.
Yeah.
Right. But like that idea of partnering together, et cetera, like that is a way of saying that God is not almighty. And the way that we use the word almighty, right? That's more of a God of the Teton kind of God, right? So like your sermon was against creed, but we at the same time we said the creed, but we held loose from both ends.
Yes.
Certainly along the lines what Don said, it certainly was a sermon that does not reflect the idea of almighty in the way that we understand, that many of us understand what almighty means. Okay.